Yo, what's going on, guys? So today we are covering YARA. So if you guys are excited about YARA, if you guys are excited about the cyber defense path that we're doing, we're getting probably about midway, close to. So if you guys like it so far, make sure you hit the sub button, hit that bell notification to be notified every time I upload a video, which is a couple times a week. And then also, if you want to support any other way, the Patreon is a great way to do that. I really appreciate it. Now let's get started and hop right into it. We're almost to 1,000 subs, guys, by the way, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Okay, so here we are. YARA, what is it? We're going to just skip this question. Boom. Okay, what is it? Swiss Army knife is what they're calling it here for malware researchers. Okay, so this is a slightly different box than what we're used to. We're used to doing kind of offensive or CTFs, that type of stuff. This is malware analysis. If you guys aren't familiar with malware analysis, I wouldn't call myself an expert in malware analysis by any means. I have done some malware analysis, but I don't have the mindset for it the way that some do. So I am going to cover the box, but I'm not going to deep dive into malware analysis or explain things quite as effectively as I normally do because this is not my area of expertise. There are people that made their entire careers out of this. So this is a very, very, very intense skill that I do not possess. So what is it? All right, what's malware analysis? So this is an example right here. This says print hello world. Well, you can make YARA search your entire network for hello world and then show you the results, right? That's a simple example of what it can do. But where that can come into play is basically, let's say you know that a certain ransomware contains something, some sort of data or string or anything, right? Or it has a hash or whatever. You can search all of your computers with this and it'll tell you, hey, found that string. We think this is your ransomware. So, because ransomware, as we know, spreads. So it may just be sitting dormant waiting to actually deploy. So things like that. Keep that stuff in mind. But there's also a lot of other things that they do. And one thing let's see, there's something they showed, but okay, so yeah, so YARA is a tool that was created that is very good for that and is implemented with a lot of other tools, and we're going to cover that. So there's rules that you make in YARA, which we're going to cover how to make those, and then it's telling you strings are a fundamental component of programming languages. The reason is because they're going to have us searching for strings, okay? So let's go ahead and start this box because it does take a little while to get going. So, okay. So now you'll see malware, just like our Hello World application, uses strings to store textual data. So, perfect example, ransomware. This Bitcoin wallet for ransom payments, it contains this, right? So we know, if we know the APT that is attacking you, or even if we are not sure, we can create a rule searching for their Bitcoin wallet, which would be on every single attack because they're going to send it all to one place, right? And we can get that data. Same thing with a botnet. Let's say the botnet is sending out information to the IP address of the C2 server, right? Well, we can just search all of your files to see if anything's being sent out to this IP, or even if it's not being sent out yet, but it contains that IP, and we can get the information and see what files are doing that. Okay, so like it says here, explaining the functionality of malware is vastly out of the scope for this room. That's true because malware isn't like it used to be. It's not as simple as sending a little file to somebody, and malware gets extremely complex, especially when you're talking APTs. And when that happens, you're talking super skilled people are searching these malwares, trying to break it down, figure out what's going on with it. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. This is just detecting it. We're not going to dive into actually analyzing what it's doing and that type of stuff. Okay, so what is the name of the base 16 numbering system that YARA can detect? And that's hex. You should be able to know that just by the base 16 numbering. Would the text enter your name be a string in an application? Yes. So if you have an application that is pretending to be a good application and you load it up and it says enter your name, you could, if you knew what malware you're looking for and you knew that it does that, you could say anything that says enter your name, send back to me, and we can find it, right? And then we can look at those results and say, okay, that is the malware or it's not, right? It allows you to detect the initial thing that you're going to start deep diving into. Okay, So here, this is how to actually install YARA. I'm going to use the box they give us because I don't want to install it and do all this because I'm not a malware analyst. So I don't do this enough to need this all the time. But it is a very good tool, and I'll tell you why it's a good tool, even for hackers. Because not only can you search for things and make rules, that means I can also use YARA to search remote systems and say, show me where the social security numbers are. Show me where the credit cards are, right? Now, there's better tools out there probably for that specific skill, but it's good to know because there is binary versions of this, executable versions, things like that. It's Windows, Linux, so it's good to know different options, okay? All right, so we deployed it. You can go ahead and see that there's a username, password, and SSH port if I want to SSH into it, but it's right here, so I don't need to. Okay, so introducing YARA rules. So this is breaking down how is YARA designed? How are the rules designed? And this is a good way to understand it because YARA gets implemented, especially if you're doing malware analysis, in many other tools, and it'll be implemented around with tools. You'll see it kind of thrown in. You'll see that. Well, when you see it, it's good to see how it's built because that way you can at least break down and see the rules that they're looking for. All right, so here it is. Every YARA command requires 2 arguments. There's the rule and then the name of the file or process that the rule's for. So, for instance, here's the command that you'd run for YARA, and then my rule, which is the rule you just made, .yar, and then whatever directory you want to run it on, meaning whatever you want to search for, right? So note that .yar is the standard file extension for the rules. So that's important. So now what we're going to do is we're going to show you. So we'll go ahead and touch, and we'll say some file. So it's just going to make a file, right? And then we'll go ahead and make a rule for YARA. So we're going to say my first rule.yar because that's what you need, right? And then you'll see the rule, the way this works is you'll type rule, example rule. So this is just basic programming, or basic coding, I should say. And the condition is true. Okay? So now, what does this do, right? This rule literally just says if it's true, send it back, right? Let us know. So now we can go ahead and save it, exit. All right. So go ahead and clear. All right, you can see it right there, right? So now it says my first rule.yar. Okay. So we just copied exactly what they said. Now, here's where it's kind of interesting. So now let's give, here it kind of explains what it's doing. So simply the rule we made checks to see if the file that we specify exists. So does it exist? So let's do YARA, right? Because if condition equals true, so if the file exists, so we'll say my first rule. Okay, so it's going to read that rule, and then it's going to say what file. So we're going to actually purposely put some1 file because I want it to not find it first, so you see. And you can see error, couldn't open file. Okay, so it didn't find anything. But then if we get rid of the 1 and we say some file, look at what we get. We get the example rule back. We get the name of the rule that we created back. So that means the condition was true. So that means that file does exist. So you can see already how this could be a useful tool, not just in malware analysis, but even just something simple like this. This took us 5 seconds to make a rule to search to see if a file's there. Well, we could then scan our entire, network to find a file like that's and see if it exists anymore. Like let's say you remove a user, right? And you think you purged all their data, but you need to make sure that they have files out there that are important, or that you shouldn't have any sensitive files out there. You can see how you could start searching for these issues. Now, that's not what this is designed for. That's just where my head goes as a hacker. So that's just what I'm trying to explain, is that even if you don't want to be a malware analyst or aren't interested in malware analysis, it's important to learn these tools because these are the tools that people are going to be using when you do find that new malware or something like that. So you need to understand part of it too as well. Okay, so if some file exists, your example rule becomes the pattern met. So there you go. You get it right back. Example rule, some file. Okay, so that was our first rule. We just made our first rule. Congrats. Okay, so now you can actually go here and read this. And this gives you a lot more like how to make comments, how to search for strings, all that stuff. So it's a really good tool. I think you should check it out if you're interested. But you can see it's kind of telling you how they break it down anyway. So here you go. This section of YARA rule is reserved for descriptive information. So this is how you're going to make the rules. Then you have strings, which is, so like rule. So here you're going to put the rule. Hello world checker is going to be the name of the rule. And then the strings. Hello world equals hello world. So now when this rule runs, you can tell it in there what string to search for. So you can see like there, the condition is hello world. So you're declaring the strings. So hello world, that's a variable, equals hello world. So now when you do condition, hello world, it's going to say, does it match this? If it does, we'll give you the name of the rule. If not, we're going to say error, right? Now you can see the problem with this would be it's only going to search for that specific hello world with the capital H, capital W. It's not going to search for things that are a little off, meaning like case sensitive, or maybe there's no exclamation point at the end or any of that. So what you can do is under condition, so you can go into strings and you can specify hello world, then hello world lowercase, hello world uppercase, and all of the ones you want, you can specify them. And then you can say under the condition, instead of saying condition, just run hello world or just run hello world lowercase, run them all, any of them. So it's going to search all of them now to see it. Now keep in mind, the more rules you're going to apply, obviously the longer it's going to take, right? This is all based on computing power and things like that too. So keep all that in mind, that you could get very specific with this, but if you're doing it on a large scale, you may want to run it at night or something like that. All right, so we have already used the true and any of them conditions. So that's what we just did. And then now you can see it's just like any programming language. You can use less than, greater than, equal. So here, if it finds 10 or less hello worlds, it will give you the results. Otherwise, it will just skip it. So if you have a file that just says hello world 50 times, it's not going to show you that. Okay, so to combine multiple conditions. So this is the and, not, or. This is the same as anything else. So again, it's all in the condition. So these are just declaring variables pretty much. And then the condition is always hello world and text file. So not only does it need to say hello world, but it also has to have a text extension there. Okay, so keep that in mind. So you can see here, it will ring true here because that text file inside of it says hello world and it's a .txt file. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you guys. If it doesn't, read a little bit more about it, because it does kind of, I'm going through it a little quickly, but it does require just small program language knowledge, and it doesn't even require it. I'm just, the way I'm explaining it does, because I'm calling them variables and saying they're being declared and things like that. What that means is simple. Here you're naming this text hello world, so anytime you call on it later, it's going to have that place to call on it, which is what that money sign is for. So it's kind of hard to explain if you've never done any programming whatsoever, but if you have, it's pretty basic, pretty simple. So here, this is the anatomy of a YARA rule. This is something someone created that is really good, really useful. You can see they kind of break down the different parts for you and just kind of show you the different pieces. Okay, so now we have the modules. So the modules are things you can import with other libraries, so you can go ahead and integrate them. So frameworks such as Cuckoo's Sandbox and Python's PE allow you to create YARA rules from things that happen in that environment. So for instance, you go into Cuckoo's Sandbox, you run malware on purpose, watch it happen, and then you can create YARA rules based on what happened, and it creates them for you. So you don't have to specifically write out every single line, right? So that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting. Now it's going to tell you, and then same thing with Python's PE, which, if you guys don't know what Python's PE is, it's the Windows Portable Executable Structure. It's basically, it's hard to explain if you've never used it, but basically it's the standard for DLL files like it says here. So what that means is you can use it to check for DLL files or purposely recreate an attack using DLL files, which is just small executables that So for instance, if you guys don't know what a DLL file is or DLL hijacking, this is what a lot of attacks happen. Log4j was a DLL hijack attack, which was very recent. But basically, when you start a program on Windows, right, whether let's say it's a simple program, well, it's got configuration files, if you will, which are just small executables that run in the background to make multiple things happen. And when that happens, they're called DLL files, dynamic linked library. Now, when they actually get ran, that's great. The problem is sometimes those DLL files have insecure permissions, meaning someone can edit them. So now when someone calls on that file, whether, whatever that program is, it's going to run the DLL file first, but since it had insecure permissions, someone could have changed that file and made it basically whatever they wanted. So now they have an executable on your system. That's a long way of explaining it, but that's basically what it is. Okay, so now here's YARA tools. So these are tools that actually use YARA and integrate them directly. All right, welcome back, guys. So here we are on YARA tools, which is basically a way that YARA is implemented into tools that do more than just what YARA can do, but they use YARA's functions and features, okay? So the guy that created most of these tools, apparently Florian Roth, apparently he was a big superhero fan because almost all of them are named after some sort of mythical superhero creature type thing. So just keep that in mind. So Loki, who is Loki? I don't get that, but okay. So Loki is a free open source indicator of compromise scanner. So if you guys have done any sort of security work at all, you should know what an indicator of compromise looks like. Security analysts, this is kind of their whole job, right? Is they're going to be sitting there getting alerts, looking at logs, things like that, and looking for IOCs or indicators of compromise. So they're looking for something that says, hey, this could be compromised. Okay. So here, based on the GitHub page, detection is based on 4 methods for Loki. That's what they're saying for this tool Loki. The first thing they're going to look is the file name to see, is it share a file name with something that's suspicious, malicious, etc. Then the YARA rule check. So what that means, you create the YARA rules, and it also has YARA rules built in, but you can create YARA rules. So now it's going to check those rules and then give you a response based on the rules. So if the rule says check for, this hash, which is a malicious file that you know about, it will check that. Now, then it will check hashes. So I know I just said that, but you can create a rule specifically for a specific hash. But then it's going to check hashes for malicious files that it knows. Now keep in mind, you have to update that database. And then the C2 back connect. So what that means, pretty obvious. Botnets, things like that. Not even just botnets, but pretty much a lot of attacks have to call back to a C2 server, because if not, there's nothing you can do, because you're not just going to keep an open connection all the time, because you'd get caught very quickly because there's too much data going back and forth. Those are just going to be sitting in logs over and over, and people are going to catch on to it. So that's pretty much the 4 things it's going to look for. Now, that's Loki. Now here's Thor. Again, another superhero named program. So Thor Lite is what it is. Now this is for indicators of compromise and a scanner. So basically this is pre-compiled for Windows, Linux, and Mac. It's a light scanner. Keep that in mind. You have to pay for the bigger scanner, the better scanner, I guess you'll say. Then you have Fenrir, which is another mythical creature, I guess. This is the third tool. Again, all created by the same guy. The updated version was created to address issues from its predecessors, where requirements must be met for them to function. So Fenrir is a bash script. That's the big difference, right? Because Fenrir can run on anything that can run bash, which is pretty much everything nowadays. So that's huge, because these ones here had to have like an actual executable for Windows, an actual, so on and so forth. Here, Fenrir can run anything on bash. So that's a big upgrade. And then you have yet another YARA automation. So what do all these tools do? What is the point, right? They add functionality. So Loki, for instance, it will look for indicators of compromise, which then, using YARA, it basically builds onto YARA. So it's going to look for YARA rules, but it's also going to look for these other 3 things. And then therefore you have kind of a more wide range of indicator of compromise scanning. This here, same thing. Thor is going to do the same thing, but Thor is a little bit lighter version, and it can also be installed on pretty much everything. And then you have obviously Fenrir, which is the bash. Same thing, indicators of compromise, but it's much lighter, simpler, and it can just be ran in bash. So therefore, you can have it on a flash drive or whatever else. Okay, now let's go ahead and use Loki. So now we're going to start getting into the questions. So as a security analyst, you may need to research various threat intelligence reports, blogs, blah, 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 which is true. Typically in these readings, indicators of compromise, meaning hashes, IP addresses, domain names, will be shared. So you're going to instantly get, let's say you read an article and this big attack came out, you need to make sure you're not vulnerable. So you're instantly going to start scanning for IP addresses that are in files, because there's a lot of what can happen is you can have malware sitting on your systems and not know it because they're waiting to click that button. They're waiting for a certain time for it to turn on. And the reason they do that is so that they can actually traverse a little bit more before you catch it. Because usually, if you have malware, ransomware, anything like that, if it gets on the first machine, you're going to catch it right away if it's activated. Now, what they might have it do is sit there for a week and try and worm its way around and then activate, etc., etc. So that's why you're looking for indicators of compromise before you get too deep, before ransomware takes over everything. Okay, so as mentioned before, Loki has already a set of rules that we can benefit from. So it already has a set of rules. Perfect. So what we can do is we can go into the tools, and this is the attack box they gave me, so keep that in mind. So we can go into Loki, and you can see Loki has all this, but it also has signature base. So signature base is going to look for specific things called a signature. This is very common when you're looking for malware, because most malware does the same thing every box it goes to. Now, there are some that change and stuff like that, but for the most part, they run the same. So you're looking for the signature. So now we're in the tools. Now we're going to say, go ahead and run Python loki.py. Are we in the tools? We're not in the tools. We need to go to, where are we? Okay, so we are in the tools. I'm sorry. So now I think I went one step too far. Yep, I did. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and run Python loki.py tech h, and this is just the help menu. So it's just going to show you all the different things you can look for. Print all the files, warning levels, alert scores. So you can have it give you a little bit more information, a little less information, but it will make a report for you, so you don't have to worry too much about missing something if it's like scrolling by the screen. All right, so we're going to scan the first one, and then the rest I'm going to walk through, but I'm not going to scan them on here because it does take a long time because they are bigger and they have more rules that they're searching for. Okay, guys, I'm back. Sorry, so I figured out why it's taking so long. I didn't put the path and as the period right there at the end. So if you guys are doing this, I recommend doing that because what's happening is it's searching the entire system rather than searching the path that I'm in. So that's why it's taking forever. All right, so does Loki detect this file as malicious, suspicious, or benign? Okay, so let's go ahead and start looking at what it found. This is way faster, by the way, if you're wondering. So you can see Loki recommends a deeper analysis of the suspicious object. So suspicious, perfect. What YARA rule did it match on? And then you can see here, if you look at the YARA rule, where is it? YARA rule, right there. Reason 1, YARA rule match web shell _ metis loft. Metis L soft. Okay, what does Loki classify this file as? And it's pretty obvious. It says right there web shell, but it also says description web shell. Okay. Based on the output, what string within the YARA rule did it match on? And that's string 1. So what that means is YARA rule, web shell, metasloft, whatever it's called, that's the name of the rule that it had built in. And if you look at string 1 in there, this is string 1. It matched that, meaning it found that, which tells us that's malicious. So what is the name and version of this hack tool? Now you can see it's right there actually. B374K 2.2 is the name of the hack tool and version. And here I think it tells you to do something else. Check first bytes. Okay, so it does first bytes. Okay. So inspect the actual YARA file that flagged file 1. So if you actually go to this file, web shell, whatever, file metasloth.php, whatever, you go to the file that the YARA is actually in, which is under the Loki rules, YARA rules. Within this rule, how many strings are there to flag this file? So there's only one. So if you go to it, there's only one string in there to flag the file, and that's what it was. So we'll go ahead, hit enter to exit. So scan file 2. Okay, so now we got to go back into file 2. All right, so file 2. All right, and now we'll just run the same thing, but this time we will, okay, we should be good. There's only one file in there, and we'll see if it goes faster now. File 2 still took me a while last time, but we'll see. Okay, that didn't take any time. Perfect. So here we go. So it didn't find us anything. It says system seems to be clean. So it found it as benign. It found no issues. Okay, well, the problem with this is inspect file 2 was the name of the version of the web shell. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at it. Index.php is the file. So inspect file 2, what is the name and version of this web shell? So if you actually look at the comments in the file, so let's go ahead and cat it. By the way, that's a 1 for index, not actual index, so just FYI. And we can look at it, and if you just would actually grep the comments out, you'd probably see it. But if we look, get up here, and I already saw the name Zepto, which is familiar, so that tells me that's probably part of it. But what we'll do, get up top. Okay, so you got to actually dive in. We'll do head. And we'll say, what was it, index? Okay, so now we'll go ahead and look at them. All right. Okay, so basically, if we look at it, there it is right there. I actually didn't even have to really read any of it. I was looking, but there it is. It's B374K again. And there's the GitHub page, and there's the shell number, 323. So you didn't really have to do much of anything, right? You just had to look at the file. Boom, there it is. Easy day. Okay. And it gives you the hint to look at the file. So, and basically what it's telling you, if you guys didn't catch that, because I was kind of scrambling through it because I got different results this time because I messed up the first time. But basically, what it's telling you is file 2 is malicious and it didn't catch it. So they did that on purpose. They want you to not catch it on purpose so that they can show you what to do. So keep that in mind. If you don't catch it, they don't want you to. Okay. So now here it says from the previous section we realized that we have a file that Loki didn't flag on, which is what we want. At this point, we're unable to run Loki on other web servers because of file 2 exists. So what does that mean? So what it means is if we know this shell is on my web server and it didn't catch it, there's no point in running Loki on any of the other web servers because it's not going to catch it on there either. So we need to include a rule that says look for this file on other servers too, based on whatever you want. But so now what we're going to do is use strings. Because what we're going to do is we're trying to look for a string that may be unique that we can then look into and say, look for this string because then we'll know it's in that file. So we'll say strings and the file name is that index. And then we'll say, right now we're just seeing how many strings. Okay, so there's 3,580 readable strings. I'm not going to go through those manually. So, which is what they're telling you, we're going to use a tool called YARGN. So we'll go back. And I think it's under tools. And there's YARGN. So we'll say cd YARGN. And so YARGN, what is YARGN? What does it do? Okay, right here. So YARGN, yes, another tool created by the same guy, Florian Roth. Guy's a freaking maniac with malware analysis. Okay, so what is YARGN? YARGN is a generator for YARA rules. So it can generate the rules for you based on a file you give it. So it will actually, it can do it based on other things too, but we're going to give it the file and it's going to go through and find something unique in that file and create a YARA rule for you that you can then put into Loki, and boom, now it will detect it. So navigate to the YARGN directory, which is, yep, we got that. All right, we don't have to update it because we're on this box, but you normally would have to update it. So we're going to copy their exact thing. But so cmnatic is the actual home directory. Suspicious. Okay, it doesn't allow that. So suspicious files, file 2, which is the one we want, exclude good, and you'll see what, we'll break this down, so don't worry. Home, cmnatic, suspicious, files, file 2.yar. Sometimes I just get typing and I can't get my hands back where I want them. Okay, so let's break this down. So m is the path you want path to the files you want to generate rules for. So that's our file 2. We want to generate a rule for that to find it in the future. Exclude good forces to exclude all goodware strings, meaning strings that you'd find in legit software, like for instance print. Let's just say print command, right? Well, that's going to be found in a lot of software, so don't do that. Don't give us a print command because we're going to find it in everything, right? So that'll stop false positives. Then O is just the location that you want to output it. So here it reads Python yargan, the directory that we're reading into for the file. So the file 2, we want to create a rule based on the file in there. And then exclude good. Okay, so we don't want regular common phrases. And then O, which is the output file, we want it file2.yar. And that's the name of it. That's what we're going to name it. So we hit enter. Okay, no module name, cmnatic, suspicious, files. I probably messed up. I definitely messed up. I didn't put yargan. All right, so yargan.py. There we go. Okay, so now we'll go through from within the root. So now there's another tool, YARA Analyzer, that can also assist. We're not going to examine that tool in this room, but that's okay. From within the root of the suspicious file directory, what command would you run to test YARA and your YARA rule against the file 2? So what they mean is that by that is what's the command that you'll use to actually see if that YARA rule will detect, and we'll show you that here. And it's just YARA, which will run the YARA tool. Then file2.yar, which is our new rule. So we're going to implement our rule. And then file2, which is the file that we're actually looking at. And then index.php. So this is the directory and then the file. That's all it is. So it's saying run YARA, use the rule that we created, which is the YARA file, and then use it on this file, which is the index.php. So no big deal. And that will test it, and it will say, yeah, it did work. So it did find it, which is perfect. All right, so we'll go ahead and back out. We'll go back to CD. We want tools, I think is where we had it. Or no, suspicious files, I'm sorry. And then file 2 it should be. All right, so now in file 2, you can see, where did we put it? There it is, file2.yar. So we can say YARA file2.yar. So we're going to run YARA with our new rule, and we're going to say we want it on file2 index.php. And you can see it found it because we got home semantic suspicious files. We got that. We didn't get the error. So it did find it, which means it worked. So now copy the YARA rule you created. So let's go ahead and copy it to the Loki signatures. So we need to go back. We need to say tools, Loki, and then you can see the tool or the signature base. So what we'll do is we'll copy from our home directory. We want suspicious files, file2.yar, and we're going to copy it into signature base. And we'll name it file2.yar. All right, so now it's copied in there. So now when we run Loki, the tool or the rule we just created will actually be ran and tested on from Loki as well. So now we just run the same command that we ran before. So let's clear this out. We run that same command that we ran before. Let's see if we can find it without having to retype it or go back up. Okay, that's yargan. Come on, we're close. There it is. Loki. Now we run it in. Well, we got to go. We'll run it here, but we know it won't work. All right. So now we'll go back to suspicious files, file 2, and then we'll run it again. And you'll see that we'll get a different result than what we got before, or we should get a different result. And you can see, okay, we didn't get a different result, which means we probably didn't add it in there properly. Let's see. Press enter to exit. All right, let's go see what we did. So let's go back into Loki. So we'll cd. Jesus, it's like not responding when I'm typing. Okay, tools. So this is a good thing to look at because, so we can go to Loki, we can go to ls, we can say signature base because that's what we want. And we can, there's our file 2.yar. That's why right there, we need to put it into the actual YARA rules, not into, so file 2.yar, we'll move it into YARA file 2.yar. There we go. So that's what happened. So now we go back into, what was it? Suspicious files, file 2. All right. So hopefully you guys understand what I didn't put it all the way in the YARA rules directory. I just put it in the Loki directory, which is not what you want. So now let's try it again. And it's good to see those mess ups because that's important for you guys to understand that it's that easy to make a mistake on here. So you kind of have to really pay attention. But you see, boom, instantly we get the warning. So now we got a different, totally different actual result, which tells us, perfect, now it will actually find it in the future, which is what we want. So now, test the YARA rule. Did it find it? It did. What is the name of the variable for the string that it matched on? So let's find the variable. There it is, Zepto. So it matched on the Zepto variable, which is a unique variable that they used. So that tool, let's go through the whole process. I know this is taking a while, but I want to explain the process. So the tool that we created, Yargan, went through that file that we gave it, and it found unique strings that it could match, which is Zepto is the function, because that's a unique name. It found that, then create a rule in YARA that says, hey, anytime you find this Zepto, let me know. And then it found it and returned it to us when we scanned it on our file 2. So we found Zepto based on the rule that we created. Now, that's a simplified version of it, but it is what it did. Okay, so now inspect the YARA rule, how many strings were generated. Okay, so I'm not going to do this, but you guys can do this if you want. You're just going to go through the YARA rule that we created. You can just cat it, whatever, and it's going to show you there's 20 different strings that it created for you that it's going to try to find, and they're labeled S1, S2, S2 through 20. So I'm not going to show you guys what 1 through 20 looks like. You guys can look at that if you want. One of the conditions to match on the YARA rule specific file size, this file has to be sized under what? So basically, again, if you read the actual rule that it was generated, it'll show very simply, it'll show 700 kilobytes less than, that's one of the conditions because that file was under 700 kilobytes. So it doesn't want to scan every file ever, and if it finds a keyword like Zepto, it's gonna, because there's possibilities that it's looking for a specific type of signature, which is the size, keywords, etc., etc. All right, so now we're in Valhalla. So this one I actually have pulled up because I didn't want to have to redo this and go back through. Okay, because you have to input a couple of things. Okay, so Valhalla, what is it? This is basically a web version of what we just did. You can put hashes and things like that in here, and then it will actually go through and scan it the same way we did, and it is basically a database that already has the results for you. So let's just be honest. So it's not going to actually do much scanning. It's just going to give you the results. So enter the SHA-256 hash of file 1. Stop whining. Enter the SHA is the file attributed to an APT group, and it's yes. So I'm going to show you guys here. This is the SHA of hash of file 2 because basically that's the one we're going to actually get asked about. So I didn't put the first one in here. You can copy the 256 SHA in there. It's always in the results of of this, or of Loki, or you can actually do it yourself. But either way, they just want you to put the hash in. If you put the hash, it does return results. Now, for the file 2, here we get a little different result. We get some actual instances where this has been found. So do the same for file 2. What is the name of the first YARA rule? So this is the YARA rule that Valhalla is using to actually find it, and it found it right there. Perfect. So there's the name, web shell B374, whatever. All right, so now examine the information from virus total. Okay, so we can go right here on virus total. If you guys have never used virus total, it's a very good tool. I recommend it. I use it almost daily, and I recommend it for everybody. So here it is. If you actually go, and I can show you, if we go here and we go to virus total, here's the results you get. And you can see the signature matches the Thor apt scanner. So other people have found this signature using Thor apt scanner. That's what they're saying. And they've reported it into virus total. So there's Thor apt scanner. Now, if you remember, Thor apt scanner was created by the same guy that created these. So it's basically a similar tool. So now enter the SHA-256 hash of file 2 into virus total, which same thing. We did that here. There's the hash. All right. And then did every AV detect this malicious? So is this 100%? No, not every single person ever made it. Basically, not every antivirus detected it and said it's malicious, but that doesn't mean anything, because if I see a score like that where 29 security vendors said it's dangerous, I'm trusting that it's dangerous. Okay. So now, besides the .php, what other extension is recorded for this file? So here you go to details, and so you can see it's .php. But besides that, you can see that there's actually, if we go down here, there's actually a .exe for it too. So it doesn't have to be a .php. Okay, so now what JavaScript library is used by file 2? So this one was a little bit harder to find, but all you got to do is go here, go to the GitHub page for file 2, which is what this is, right? And then when you go on the GitHub page, so let's just do it from the start. So we go to the GitHub page, okay, and here's the index.php file, which is the actual file, right? And this is where the JavaScript is being called in. So JavaScript and CSS files start. So you can see zepto.javascript. So it says what JavaScript library is being used. It's Zepto, and we knew that based on this earlier. So now, is this YARA rule in the default YARA file Loki uses to detect? We know it's not in the default because it didn't find it before. So we knew that. We didn't have to even look. No, it's not. So the YARA rule is not in the default. So there you go. Hopefully that made sense to you guys. I know this is kind of, I have a tough time because I'm not an expert in malware analysis, breaking it down to someone that might be completely new to malware analysis, because to me, some of the concepts make sense because of previous experience and stuff, but they're not necessarily something that I can say, I know the exact wording. For instance, when we're looking at YARA, I'm calling them variables and saying they're being declared here and et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if that's the proper wording that malware analysts use. So if a malware analyst watches this video and says, hey, we don't call it that, or hey, we don't do this, then more power to you. Please comment and let me know, because I'm not a malware analyst. It's just not something that, it's not that it doesn't interest me. It interests me. It's not something I enjoy doing as much as what I do now. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully it made sense to you guys, because this is kind of a lot of information that's kind of off the beaten path. This is a little different than what we usually cover. So it's a little bit off the beaten path. So if you follow most of my videos and you're like, oh, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense, but then this one you're like, I don't really understand, it's because it is a totally different skill set. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the video still and learned something, because YARA is still a great tool, and I've still used it in the past quite a bit, but I don't use it as in-depth as like an analyst would use. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you guys liked the video. Subscribe. Let's get to 1,000 guys, and let's keep grinding. I appreciate you all, and you guys have a great day.